friends, and welcome to the Lighting Lab. Hey friends, welcome to Quarantine and Lighting with Dean. Hey friends, welcome to Lighting Lab. Unfortunately for all of you, I am not as funny as Julie, so I'm just going to try to get this information to you as quickly and straightforward as possible. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or post on the discussion board, and hopefully this is a short video that you can just watch real fast and then be able to take a quiz. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me at leong@cua.edu or post any questions you might have on the discussion board on Blackboard. In this video, we're going to review the 4 parts of the Source 4 ERS. We're going to talk about cabling. We're also going to talk about safety while you're hanging a light. Now, I can't actually hang a light inside my own home. I don't have the pipe to do it, sad to say. That being said, there's a YouTube video posted on Blackboard that shows you how to hang a light in a theater on a pipe, which again, I don't have. So, let's get started with the 4 parts of the Source 4 ERS. So we're going to start our review with the cap, which is the first part of the Source 4 ERS. You can break this guy down into about 3 different parts, which is the pigtail, also known as the power cord, your lamp, no real other word for this except for the fact that this is not a light bulb, and then the last part is your socket, also known as the base. Without these 3 parts, we don't have an electrical system. Without an electrical system, we don't really have a lighting instrument, and that is the cap. The next part we're going to talk about is the reflector housing, or commonly referred to as just the housing. As you can see, there's a reflector on the inside because this is an ERS, ellipsoidal reflecting spotlight. Be a little silly if we didn't have one of those. Anyway, the other important section to this part is the yoke, which is this U-shaped flat metal bar right here. This is the mount. It allows us to attach our light to either a pipe, the floor, a floor mount, an I-beam, anything that your imagination can come up with. Along with the yoke, we also have our safety chain, which we can use to wrap around either a pipe or another solid piece of the building in order to help prevent the unit from falling. And then the last part that we have is the lighting C-clamp, which allows us to attach it to a pipe. In order to put these 2 parts together, you can take your cap, align the brass screw on the inside, the receptacle, wiggle it so it fits, tighten it so it makes an awful noise until you can't do it anymore, and then that is that. Ta-da! Alright, the next part we have is the barrel, also known as the body. Apart from connecting the lens tube into the housing and the rest of the lighting instrument, the barrel is also important for accessories. We have our shutter system inside of our barrel, which allows us to create any sort of 4-sided shape in our pool of light. It also has accessory slots. Let me get that guy out of the way for a second. So the accessory slots, there's a large one and a small one. We're going to start with the large one first. That is the iris slot. Now, with the iris slot, you don't have to put an iris in here. There are multiple other accessories like a gobo rotator, a color changer, all sorts of different things that you can put inside of here in order to create different effects with your lighting instruments. The more commonly used lighting accessory slot is the gobo slot. For that, you would take your gobo held inside of a gobo holder, line it up, give it a wiggle, and then voila. Whoops. You have a pattern being projected with your lighting instrument. To attach the barrel with the rest of the light, first you grab the rest of your light, and then you line it up so that we drop in. Once we drop in, we give it a little spin, and then there's a knob on the back of the light, which you tighten. And it looks like this one. And you know, it takes forever. There we go. Ta-da! The last piece we have is the lens tube. The lens tube can be broken down into two important sections, and that is the lens on the inside, which controls the size of the pool of light that gets outputted, and the other important part is the gel frame accessory slot. Now, you don't have to put a gel frame in this slot. You can also put any sort of accessory that is fitted for this space. A Rosco IQ, a top hat. There are other things out there. Their names just escape me right now. But that is your lens tube. So before you can take your lens tube and attach it to the rest of your light, you need to stop and take a second to make sure you're not going to install it upside down. There is, in fact, a top and bottom to this light. The top part of the light is where the accessory and gobo slots are. The bottom part of the light is where the power cord comes out of the back of the light. It's right down here. Now, in order to put the lens tube in, you want to make sure the retention clip, this guy, on the color frame holder, is on the top part of the light along with the iris slot and gobo slot. Then you just align the ridges, shove that tube in just a little bit, and then there is a hole slot on the top with another thumb screw that you use to tighten the instrument together. Now, there is a slot on the top and on the bottom. I prefer to take this and put it on the bottom and putting it on the top as a visual aid right now. There is no wrong way to do it, despite the fact that other people will tell you otherwise. And that's the whole light. So after you hang your light, the next thing that you need to do is run power to it. And by doing so, we use cable. As you can see on the table, there are a couple of different types and examples, and we're going to go through each one very quickly. First one, and the one that's most commonly used in our theater and in most theaters around the area, is this. This is called 2PNG, or stage pin extension cable. The 2PNG stands for 2 pins and a ground. It has a male and a female receptacle or plug, and it is highly rated to carry a lot of electricity. I know that this particular piece of cable is 5 feet because we have a color marker on there. If you are interested in learning our color code distance system, feel free to email me. I can send you the file. All of our dimmers have stage pin connectors attached to them, so we are a primarily stage pin house. Now, however, with the invention and the implementation of LED units, we are starting to more commonly use this cable. Now, you might know this as extension cord. The type of plug on the end of it is called an Edison plug, and you see these around your house, around your dorm, this is the most common plug that we see around America. Apart from that, some people call this extension cable, I call it extension cord. It's the same thing. It is not as highly rated as your stage pin connector, but it can carry just as much power safely. Again, these are starting to become more and more common because things are, there are laws and regulations that are making things such as our stage pin connector slightly outdated. Everything's becoming more universal. Everything's becoming more the same, which is not a bad thing. The cable right here looks a little funny because there are 2 females and 1 male coming out of it. This is also a stage pin connector. This is called a twofer. So if I ever wanted to plug 2 lights into the same dimmer, I would use a twofer. I would plug this end into the power source, and I would plug 1 light into this end and then 1 light into this end. The biggest reason why I would use a twofer is because I might have a limited number of dimmers in my theater space, and I might have more lights than I do dimmers. If I want certain lights to turn on at the same time, I would use a twofer. There's another way to do it where if I have 2 lights that are on opposite sides of the theater and I can't run a cable to each light and then plug it into the same dimmer, I could connect those 2 lights together at the board. If I were to connect them with cable, that's called a hard twofer. If I were to connect them at the board, that's called a soft twofer. I'm going to explain that more in a later video. Now, the last 2 types of cable that we have are 5-pin DMX. There are 5 pins in there. And we also have 4-pin data or scroller cable. Now, both of these cables are primarily used to send information to smarter, more advanced lighting instruments, primarily LED instruments. With 5-pin, we use it not only to talk to LED instruments, we also use this to hook up our lighting control console or light board to our dimming system. That way it can send power, signal, and data in between the lighting console and the dimming system to tell, hey, you, light, turn on at 75%. I don't like that, turn on 60%. With 4-pin cable, it is used for the same thing, to send information and power, but it's primarily used to send information and power to lighting accessories. The more common name for 4-pin data cable is scroller cable, and that's mostly because you only see this type of cable used with gel scrollers these days. You can also see them used with certain lighting accessories like a DMX Iris, maybe a Rosco IQ, but this particular kind of cable is starting to become more and more outdated. Now, when we have our light hung on our pipe, and we're going to use this side arm right here, this little tiny baby pipe, as an example. Pretend that this piece right here is the clamp for our light, and that we need to run extension cable from our light up in another direction. So, when we're running cable, we want to do 2 things. We want to make sure the cable is securely tied to our pipe, and we also want to make sure that there's an appropriate amount of cable close enough to our light so that when it comes time to position our light or focus it, we're not fighting against the cable and not able to move it in the direction that we want it to. This is called focus slack. You want to leave an appropriate amount of focus slack with your instrument. Now, generally, you would take your male end, which is coming out of the lighting instrument, and tie it either right above or right next to, on either side, of your lighting instrument clamp. And that way, the amount of slack left between the clamp and the back of the instrument is long enough that we can point that instrument any direction that we want it to. After that, you would connect and hook up both of your cables together, and then you would tie it to the pipe. Now, there's a specific kind of knot that we like to use, and that knot is also known as your shoelace knot, but we tie it in a funny way. So you take it, you run your tie line underneath the pipe, and you go over once. And you take that same end, and you go over again. Fold it up and pull tight. This creates a cinch. Now, we do this because it will hold the cable to the pipe with very minimal effort and work done by the electrician. And when you are standing on a ladder 15 feet in the air, this is very, very handy. And then after you double over, all you do is you take your knot, you take your rope, and you tie a knot like you're tying your shoe. Just like that. That way, when it comes around to strike, we can undo the knot with relative ease. We do not, and I'm going to repeat this for effect, we do not double knot, ever. We hate it when we double knot. It takes more time to undo a double knot than it does to do that. If I ever find a double knot, I don't try to untie it. I will just cut it off. I hate double knots. They're the worst. The only place where you should use a double knot is your shoe. That's it. So in this next section, I'm going to address a couple of common mistakes and a lot of frequently asked questions that I get during this part of the lighting lecture. However, before we get into this, I want you to take a second and watch the YouTube video on how to hang a light if you have not done so already. Go ahead. I'll wait. Alright, so now that you've watched that video and you know how to hang a light, there are a couple of things I'd like to point out. One of the first ones is being on your lighting hardware, your pan nut, your yoke bolt, C-clamp, bolt, all that good stuff. Please, please, please do not over tighten these. A couple of bad things can happen. One, it's really annoying to have to come around to a light during focus and use every single ounce of my strength in order to loosen something so that just so I can point a light 2 inches to the left. It's extremely annoying. It's a pet peeve. It used to be a challenge to see how tight that you could make your light, but not so much anymore. It's a pain. Don't do it. The only time that you need to really super lock down your light is after you're done focusing said light, and that way, in case somebody runs into it, it's not going to move. The other question I get a lot is if the direction of your C-clamp matters as to where it hangs on your pipe. So, undo this real fast. So, if it matters whether your C-clamp is hanging like this or the other way, whether the mouth faces you or faces the direction that you're pointing at. Rule of thumb is I like to have the back or the spine of the light, the back of the spine of the clamp pointing in the same direction that the light's going to be rough focus. Now, by rough focus, what I mean is that when you are hanging lights, you are working either with the designer or the master electrician. And they will tell you, according to the light plot, where your light's going to be hung on your pipe, your ground, wherever, and also what direction it's going to be pointing in. If it's going to be pointing downstage center, upstage right, wherever. You don't have to get it exactly where it needs to be. That's what focus is for later on, but you do want to point it in the general direction. That way you're saving time when it does come to focus. The other reason why this is pointing in the direction of the rough focus is so that I have access to all of the hardware that I need to behind the light. That way when I come and focus it, I'm not standing in front of the light blocking all the light coming out of it. Another reason why you don't want to over tighten stuff is that this particular bolt, the pan bolt, this is made of really cheap metal. So if I were to come and tighten this a whole bunch, it's a very high possibility that I could take this guy and just snap it off. I call it the pan bolt. It has another name. It's called the fuck it nut or the Jesus bolt, mostly because when you break one off, you say one word or the other. A couple of other reasons why you don't want to over tighten things apart from it just being plain annoying. You could break that. This bolt down here could also break, the clamp bolt. Again, for the same reasons. It's made of cheap metal, or the metal might be newer, and the pipe that you're attaching it to might be older. If you were to take this and over tighten it, there's a slim, but there is a possibility that you could puncture a hole in the pipe. If you were ever to puncture a hole in your pipe, that compromises the pipe's structural integrity. And what you should do is take that whole pipe off and replace it. Luckily, we've never had to do this in Heartgate because we're smart. At least I like to think we're smart. But as you can see from this sidearm, there are a couple of indentations where this is starting to happen. This sidearm is probably on its last legs out. Pretty soon, we won't be able to use this anymore because there's going to be a hole in there somewhere. But again, this is another reason why we don't want to over tighten things. So another question I get a lot is, why can't I just take a light off the pipe? Now, there's a very specific order of operations that you want to follow whenever you're striking lights. Mostly because it can get very dangerous very fast when you are striking lights. You always want to listen to the master electrician or whoever's in charge as to what you can do to help with light strike, and then you want to follow those instructions to the letter. We love it when you're all, let's get this stuff done. But again, like I said, if you're not listening to the person in charge, things can go very badly, very quickly. One of the scariest things that can happen during a light strike is people taking lights off of pipes before they're instructed to do so. And that's scary because lights weigh about 15 or so pounds each. And more often than not, we have about 12 to 20 lights on a pipe at any given time. And the way that our fly system works, however much weight we have on the pipe, we need to have that much weight on the counter side, on the arbor. And if the pipe's down here and the arbor's up there and all the weight goes, then the arbor comes crashing down and we have a pipe that runs. And that is one of the scariest things that you're ever going to encounter in theater. So please, 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 again, one more time, please, when you're at a light strike, please follow instructions. Do not remove a light off of the pipe until you are instructed to do so. And the last thing I'm going to teach you guys on this is how to wrap a light. So wrapping a light is the simple method of getting it ready to be stored. You always want to store your lights in a clean, dust-free area. The irony of that is that I don't think an area like that exists inside Hartke. That being said, we do in fact try our best. So, in order to wrap a light, first you take your light, whether it is on the pipe or off the pipe, you can do it either way. The first thing you do is you push in your shutters. If your light doesn't have shutters, you can skip this step. The next thing you want to do is you take your barrel, push it all the way in, and tighten that sucker down. Again, if it doesn't have a barrel that moves, skip that step. Next part, get your safety out of the way, and then grab your pigtail or power cord, wrap it once around the light, and then tuck it in on itself like so, and it can just hang there. Then, after you get the okay, if your light is still in the pipe, after you get the okay to remove your light, undo your safety chain, put your light on the ground, and then do the same thing with your safety chain. You do it like this because it's easier. Wrap the safety chain around, clip it to itself like so it can't come undone, and bada bing, bada boom, you have wrapped yourself a light. So that's everything that we're going to go over today in this video. Again, if you ever have any questions, please feel free to email me or post anything that you can think of on the discussion board, and I promise that I will answer it as soon as I can. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, sorry I'm not as funny as Julie. I'll work on that for the next one. But again, no promises. Toodaloo.